Welcome to another episode of SaaS Builders. I'm your host, Jefferson Nunn, and today I'm joined by special guest Charles Reed. Got a very innovative HR payroll platform. Would love to hear a lot more about it. Charles, why don't you kick us off?
Well, Jefferson, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. My company is GetPayroll. We provide payroll services and payroll-related services to small and medium-sized businesses around the country. We've been in business for 30 years. 30 years last month is when we incorporated. So, and our unique selling proposition is we're compliance experts. We're the people that when there's a problem, we solve it with the IRS or the state or the local governments, with reporting, with whatever. All of our competitors do a reasonably good job of producing paychecks. But when the IRS screws up, or the client screws up, or things just get out of whack, they don't have the personnel and the professional people to handle that. I'm a CPA. I am a U.S. Tax Court Practitioner, which allows me to represent my clients in tax court without being an attorney and without charging an attorney's fee. We just do it as a matter of service for our clients based on the regular fee. So we provide a compliance level. In 2019, the IRS issued $13 billion in employment tax penalties. That's it. The average small business gets hit 40%, of every small business gets a penalty in a year for an average of $800. That's average. So if you weren't penalized 2 years ago or last year, you're due this year. So we solve those problems. That's where we have a uniqueness that our competitors don't.
That's just absolutely incredible. I mean, I was just thinking, I'm in the wrong business. I should start a government. I could charge $13 billion for no reason. Wow.
And over half of them got abated, which means they were in error. People outside of the industry don't realize just how many errors the IRS makes. You've got 100,000 people, all civil servants. You're dealing with technology in some cases that goes back to the 1960s. You don't have an adequate budget for training. They're unionized. It's a recipe for mediocrity. I mean, I know a lot of nice people at the IRS. They're mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, but they're civil servants. They show up at 8:30 and leave at 4:30. And they're not too worried about it because whether you're happy or not, their paycheck isn't impacted. They're not worried about keeping you happy or making sure that everything is right. I mean, most of them are conscientious. Don't misunderstand me. The new commissioner is quite a nice guy, Chuck Reddick. I've had lunch with him several times. But that kind of government bureaucracy has inherent problems, and they're dealing with everybody in the country basically.
Right. Yeah.
So you're going to have a problem sooner or later, and that's where we come in.
Yeah. There's 300 million Americans. There's 10 million businesses, and there's only 100,000 people at the IRS. Well, yeah, that's not going to fly.
No. It's a problem.
And that's just U.S. I mean, there's all the foreign corporations and all the foreign taxes.
Right. And on top of that, you have a U.S. tax code that is written by politicians.
The worst.
And it's convoluted and self-contradictory.
And you wrote a book about a lot of this. Tell me more about it.
The Payroll Book, a guide for small businesses and startups. It's basically 30 years of wisdom distilled down to 95,000 words. Wow. I started this because I get a lot of questions and I wanted to codify it and be able to give it to people and say, here's answers and so on. It took me 2 years to write.
Wow.
But I published it with Wiley, and they did a wonderful job and provided some real resources that allowed me to create a much better book than I could have done by myself. Copy editors, proofing, indexing. People make a living doing indexing books. That's a profession.
Wow.
Okay.
And
I being the smart ass that I am, I said, well, I can do that. I'll get a program and do it. And after 3 days, the $850 fee for doing it seemed really cheap. And the index is so much better than I could have ever done. It's not even funny. So got a lot of help to make it into a good book, but it's for small businesses and startups, like it says. And it's a reference guide. I wouldn't suggest you sit down and read it unless you have insomnia, and then I'll cure the insomnia. But there's all kinds of references in there, good index. So if you have something come up, look it up. Frankly, I keep it on my desk and I look up things so I can remember them.
Makes sense. I mean, that's the thing. The IRS, their tax code is several million pages, and I don't know how anybody ever gets to it.
You don't get to it. I mean, I've been practicing taxes for more than 40 years. You practice in an area. If somebody comes to me with international transfer pricing, I send them to Price Waterhouse or somebody or Touche, because that's not my area. If I were to advise you on international transfer pricing, I would be committing malpractice.
I see.
So,
well, but there was a story a friend of mine told. He was a CPA for Michael Crichton, CPA and tax professional for Michael Crichton. And Michael, who now since deceased, but at the time, he flew to Hawaii to write Jurassic Park, right? And while in Hawaii, he rented a hotel room, had 3 spares a day, room service, and he literally locked himself in that room and wrote Jurassic Park in a matter of a couple of weeks or something like that. And he wanted to go to Hawaii because he wanted to feel the humidity, the environment, and everything, which came out of the book, And then he came back, filed the taxes, and he said, my friend said, this trip to Hawaii should be a write-off. Put it through to the IRS. The IRS said, no, that's not a write-off. That's not a business expense. That was obviously a personal expense. He traveled to Hawaii for fun or something. So my friend went to tax court representing Michael Crichton, and not only did he get an apology, which is rare, from the IRS, but he also got a lot of refunds on some of the other things that he found, because he went through everything with a fine-tooth comb at that point. Which goes to show, I think there's probably more regulation there than anybody would ever know what to do with. There's probably a loophole there that a lot of us have just not uncovered, right?
Absolutely. And it happens all the time. One of my favorite stories is the doctor in Florida who had a fishing boat. And he deducted the entire cost of that boat as a business expense. And the IRS, of course, denied it. But he had a log, and he took other doctors regularly out on fishing trips. And he recorded who he took, and he recorded how many patients they referred to him. And if after 2 trips, they didn't refer any patients, he did not take them out anymore. So it was his marketing to get patient referrals. And in the end, he got to deduct the whole thing because it was a business expense, but they weren't going to give it to him up front. There's loopholes everywhere, and it takes professionals to understand those and to prosecute that forward with the IRS. Because once the IRS gets in their head that, this is personal, or this is a hobby, or this is not a deduction, it's tough to get them to change their mind.
True story. True story. Well, tell me more about, I put it in the show notes here. You came to Plano 30 years ago, and a whole different world than it was today. Tell me more what that was like.
Actually, I moved to Plano in 1972.
Wow.
Came down from up north after service.
50 years ago.
Been in the Marine Corps. And at that point in time, and if you're familiar with Plano, and you are, Parker Road is now a major thoroughfare coming from Central Expressway, U.S. 75, across the whole Metroplex, basically now, over to I-35. And Plano was 5,000 people, and the bridge crossing Custer Creek was an old bridge, and then a sign on it said, "Cross at your own risk."
Oh my God.
There was one manufacturing plant out there in Plano that had built an old cotton field, and the security guard at night had to drive 10 miles down US 75 to Spring Valley to the Denny's to get a cup of coffee.
Wow. Different world.
Different world. Things have changed.
Yeah. And with that, I mean, there's now a lot of technology that has really changed the business, perhaps in some ways for the better. Can you tell me what do you think is next? I mean, you got people working remotely, all these remote jobs that are coming up now. What do you think is next for us?
Oh, well, remote work is here to stay. Sometimes as a manager, it annoys me because I can't see what people are doing. And that technology is improving so you can manage people better and better and better. What we're doing right now, Zoom, I mean, that didn't exist a few years ago. Keyboard trackers, other trackers, so on and so forth. Geo fencing, where you know where somebody's at based on their phone. You can pinpoint them. That's going to become very invasive over time. I mean, now you can track your kids, you know where they're at. You can see where they're around the corner or down at a friend's house that you don't like. You can see where they're at, or at least where their phone's at. And most kids these days, that phone never leaves their hand, I swear. So these are changing. I mean, we've seen so much changing over the last 30 years. Fax machines, email, computers, laptops, higher speed computers, software improvements, APIs, all these things have made life more efficient and more complex, but they allow us to do more business with less people in less time than ever before. So I think they're good. I'm not a Luddite by any stretch of the imagination, and will not go back to, pre-1960 technology. So remote work's going to stay. It's going to get more common, I think, but it's not going to go easily and people are going to fight it. But if you can work on a computer, what difference does it make where you're at? And so you're going to see not only remote work, but you're going to see more international, where people can work from the beach in France. What difference does it make? Okay. Or in South America or wherever. We're seeing a lot of this in the software development and have been for a number of years. A lot of software is now developed in India and other places. Call centers, the Philippines, everywhere. I get periodic calls. People want me to do my customer service outside of the US, which I won't do. I think our business is technical enough that idiomatic English is required to be able to talk to clients. If you're just talking about a credit card statement or something, you can get by with some accents. But when you start talking about people's payroll and money, they want to talk to somebody that speaks the same language.
Quite right. But still, you brought up an excellent point. I mean, I could be at a beach in France doing all of this. But how does that affect tax laws, I wonder? Because suppose I'm in France for half a year. Would it change at that point?
Oh, absolutely. Because you're subject to French taxes. You're obviously an expatriate. Now, 6 months is one thing. 13 months is a whole different ballgame.
Oh, wow.
Because then you're out of country for more than a year. If you haven't spent more than, I've forgotten the number of days back in the US, you're in a whole different tax status as an expatriate. Now, of course, you still owe US taxes and always will, as long as you're a citizen. So all that's changing, but it's also going to change payroll, because if you can hire people to do the work for you in India, you're not paying payroll taxes in the US. They're living in India. They're Indian citizens. They pay taxes there. They don't pay taxes here. So the whole industry with payroll and remote and taxes, it's an ever-changing thing. And if I could really tell you what's going to happen in 2 years, I'd be rich.
Good point.
Yeah, if I could predict that well, I just go win the lotto tomorrow night. Okay.
Quite right. Well, I really learned a lot in this interview, and I think the same will go for our viewers. Do you have any final tips that you'd like to share? Of course, the book will be available with the link right below the show.
Exactly. If they will go to the payrollbook.com,
Yeah.
put in the discount code podcast, we will send them a free book. No shipping, no handling, no nothing, for your listeners, for your viewers.
Awesome. Thank you very much. You get a book, you get a book, everybody gets a book.
Everybody gets a book. Just go on the payrollbook.com, discount code podcast, enter your information. We'll send you a book. We'd love to.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And do you have any final things to share with us? Any final thoughts of wisdom?
Well, there's a couple of things for your listeners that I believe in as a business person. One is there's never a traffic jam on the extra mile. Go the extra mile because your competitors won't, and you'll be amazed. And you do that not only for your clients, but you do it for your employees, and that'll do wondrous things for your business. And the other one that I love is I stole from Bill Gates. People will overestimate what they can accomplish in a year.
Very true.
And underestimate what they can accomplish in a decade. Life is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Business is a marathon, not a sprint. So stick with it. It works.
Well, thank you very much, Charles, for coming on to the show. This has been really amazing. I'm going to get this out as soon as I can. And it's been great. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, Jefferson.